A while back, Charlie Kirk went to the Cedars-Sinai emergency room for what he believed to be a blood clot. According to his friend Kyle Kashuv, there was not enough room within the ER, so they were told to put him on a bench outside. Our friends over at TYT couldn't help but gloat when they saw this.
I just want to remind Charlie Kirk that healthcare is not a right. And that's not something that I believe. It's something that Charlie Kirk believes.
To be fair to Charlie, he lived like a capitalist that day. He likes his private healthcare system. He thinks it's not a right. And so, okay, great. Then take it out to the parking lot, brother. Welcome to capitalism.
You have absolutely no right to be treated by Cedars-Sinai. Cedars-Sinai can make any decision it wants. It should be able to practice its freedom in pushing you out to the parking lot on a bench.
You made your bed, or in this case, you made your park bench. So live in it, brother. Live like a capitalist. Every single day, including the days where you have back problems.
Of course, nothing like this would ever happen if they had their way. They believe that healthcare is a right, and the reason that Charlie Kirk and others don't get the treatment they need is because other people refuse to acknowledge this. Every presidential candidate on the Democratic side I've seen thus far seems to believe that before we even talk about reform, we must first acknowledge that healthcare is a right, as if there is some significance in merely asserting this. The most progressive amongst them see Medicare for all as the best way of achieving this. Many on the left seem to genuinely believe that we need a single-payer system because we can no longer economize healthcare, because it is necessary to live.
Because there are certain things that are off the table that we shouldn't profit off of, that we shouldn't economize, and healthcare is certainly one of them.
So, are they right? Unfortunately, they're not. If we passed Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, even in its most unadulterated form, we would still have this problem. As I've said before, it may be the case that a single-payer system would be an improvement over what we have now. I don't think so, but I'm willing to concede that it's possible. What I do know is that the fundamental problem of scarcity won't be solved by putting everyone on Medicare. Let's do a simple thought experiment here. Let's say that you are on a desert island and that you have 4 people and 3 sandwiches. You can moralize all day and all night about how having a sandwich is a right. You could elect only politicians who campaign on this slogan and pass a bill unanimously declaring sandwiches to be a right, and have President Bernie Sanders sign off on it and declare it a great day for America. And what does that do to the situation at hand? Well, you'd still have 3 sandwiches and 4 people. Declaring something a right doesn't solve the underlying economic problem of scarcity. Scarcity in economics doesn't necessarily mean that something is rare. It means that the wants and needs of people exceed the available supply. And the problem for Bernie fans is that passing a single-payer healthcare bill doesn't solve this problem. Single-payer healthcare would give everyone health insurance, which is not the same thing as healthcare. Healthcare are the goods and services associated with the physical well-being of human beings. It consists of such scarce goods as heart stents, antibiotics, MRI machines, and hospital beds. It includes such services as oncological attention, radiological expertise, and nurses' hours. Health insurance, on the other hand, is not a healthcare product. It is a financial product, meant to protect you against financial loss related to unexpected developments affecting your health and your need for medical care. So, passing a bill putting every American on a health insurance program doesn't magically mean that every American now has his or her medical needs fulfilled. To my knowledge, Charlie Kirk has health insurance. Giving him Medicare would not have helped him when he got to the emergency room. The fundamental problem, that the number of people exceeded the number of beds, would have existed all the same. Now, there are certain things a government can do, or in some cases stop doing, to increase the abundance of healthcare in America. For example, we could grant more visas to more doctors from other countries, thus increasing the availability of their services here. I am all for doing things like this, but there are good reasons to believe that a bill like Bernie Sanders's would actually make things worse. Under the best case scenario, putting the entire country on Medicare would simply mean that you have more people chasing after the same number of goods and services. Under Bernie's ideal system, things would be free at the point of service, which would likely increase the quantity demanded. This is why, as I've heard some people who live in other countries, who are for single-payer healthcare, say that Americans have naive views on what single-payer healthcare is like.
The dirty little secret about socialized medicine, and I'm a big supporter of it, but the reality is, when I avail myself of healthcare here in the States, they throw absolutely everything at me, every test, barrages of procedures. Like, we're paying tens of thousands of dollars for things where there's no gatekeeper as to any of this expenditure. I didn't actually need any of that. The dirty secret is, in a socialized medicine, there would be a gatekeeper. In Australia, I would not be able to put that on the public purse. I would not be getting all of these. I wouldn't have had it. I mean, it was unnecessary.
It was unnecessary.
And my problem, my problem with Bernie's plan is that nowhere in his plan and nowhere in his speeches does he actually say, we'll have a lean, basic, efficient healthcare system for all of your important needs, but we're going to have to rein in our expectations about what healthcare is, because we can't afford to keep spending 17% of the entire economy on it, and you can't just go and get absolutely everything you might always want. We have to start having conversations about death panels. A large proportion of Medicare, and I say that obviously advisedly, a large proportion of Medicare's expenditures go in the final 6 weeks of people's lives. We have to encourage conversations between physicians and hospitals and old people about what kind of care they actually want. Like, this is tricky. I do think there is a naivete on the Bernie side of the aisle about the amount that we can do. If you simply took everything that happens in the American healthcare system currently and extended it to every single American, it would cost an absolute shit ton of money.
Even in nations where everyone is covered with insurance, you still have the rationing of finite resources. For example, in Great Britain, where they have the National Health Service, thousands of people went blind because of the rationing of eye surgery. Rationing will happen under any system you have, and declaring healthcare a right doesn't change that. Now, why do I say that Bernie Sanders' bill would potentially make things worse? Well, his plan is to cut reimbursement rates by 40%, which could have an effect on access issues. This was a point made by Charles Blahouse, author of the much-quoted Mercatus Center study, which did say that Sanders' bill would save money.
And there is a top-line projection in the study that would have national health expenditures going down, but it is predicated on several things, including those 40% provider payment cuts. Now, obviously, if you cut payments to providers by 40%, spending is going to go down. We don't know what else would happen. There might be access issues and quality issues and all sorts of things that might happen. We don't even know whether that's plausible. This is not 40% gradually over time, a la some of the changes in the Affordable Care Act. This is 40% immediately in the very first year. Whether that's plausible, I don't know.
We don't know exactly what would happen if you cut reimbursement rates by 40%, but there are some reasons to be pessimistic. Many doctors already don't accept Medicare and Medicaid because of lower reimbursement rates. It turns out that paying people less makes them less likely to provide their good or service. And it turns out that moralizing and declaring something a right doesn't change the fundamental economics of the situation.